This
Meeting to
conference
order.
will now be recorded.
I'd like to once again call the November 2nd, 2020 council meeting to order at 7 p.m. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight?
The only addition I have is a staff report that goes with the public hearing of resolution 2020-14. It's in your email and will also be presented by our city planner, Matt Straight.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Would anyone like to accept tonight's agenda? Make a motion with the one addition to the resolution?
I'll make a motion that we accept the agenda with the addition of the 2020-14 staff report.
This is Councilor Wagner. I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor Wagner,
Aye.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor McNair,
Aye.
Councilor Allen,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. There are no presentations tonight, Stephanie? Okay. I do not have a mayor's report this evening. Are there any council committee meeting reports tonight?
I have one, Mayor.
Okay, JR.
The other night, the Parks Committee got back on the phone, and they talked about quite a bit. Randy Ward was thinking about resigning, but he decided to stay on, so that was good. I think just being away from it so long kind of had him down, but it looks like he's ready to get back at it, and hopefully the rest of them are as well. They talked about maybe having a liaison to the Crown Zellerback Trail, but I'm not sure where that really went. They also talked about Rachel Ogden wanting to work with them to help write a grant, and I'm not sure where that's fleshed out all the way or not as well. The subject of masks in the park came up. Some of them weren't happy about the park hosts, particularly Anderson Park, not wearing masks at certain times. That conversation went for quite a while. I think Josette has got the best way of handling that. I think she was just going to maybe speak with them about if you're into the bathroom or, anywhere close to other people to please wear a mask. I'm not sure how much we can really regulate that, but anyway, that was a topic that they talked about. Talked about revenue being up quite a bit in all the parks, which is a good thing. You probably can look on your report, your quarterly report, and see those numbers for yourself. Somebody asked about the play shed roof. I think that was Josette had told them that was getting ready to start here in the next couple of weeks. They did not know about the kiosk at the lake, and they were happy to hear about that. They now accept credit cards. And they did not know about the kiosk at Spencer Park, which they do know now. Talked about trees quite a bit. I guess Mr. Steve Whiteman, our ex-chairman, everybody knows him, had some people that want to, I believe, donate up to another 7 trees in Spencer Park. There was a discussion around maybe some of those people want to donate some trees up at Ora Beaumeyer when the logging happens to help facilitate some larger trees there and get them planted right away. Uh, talked about the Connex box at the lake. Kind of notified parks of what was going on with that. I guess that signage grant that came up. The city was going to put in for that signage grant, but that's all on hold, probably due to COVID and money shaken loose from the state of Oregon. Ginger Johns is one of the persons I think wants to put 2 trees right in front of that little planter in front of the play shed. There's a little grass strip between the parking and or not really the parking, the driveway and the street there. What else did they talk about? That was about it. Oh, Skip Goodman was asked to take down those 2 cherry trees. I guess he knows someone that wants the burl wood from it. So I think that's kind of on the march forward pretty soon. Those are those 2. If I'm sure you guys are well aware, there's 2 ugly ones that are real blighted there as you're pulling in along the old high school. And that was about it, except for I think they're going to there's going to be a new member nominated for the parks. Next time we meet, we should see that person coming forward, and I believe they're looking for 1 more person. We also talked about hand sanitizer stations, since there is none at Anderson Park, according to some people in the Parks Department. I'm trying to locate some at work. Maybe we can donate 4 or 5, 6 of them and get them in the restrooms here. So hopefully that'll happen sooner than later. I actually got the sanitizer today. I'm just waiting for the pump stations. I think that kind of is the basic wrap of it. They're just trying to get their feet back under them, after such a long break. So it's almost like a total reset, trying to remind themselves where they were before. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you, JR. It's a lot of information you shared with us tonight. It's good to know that committee is up and running again and meeting. So thanks again for all that information, JR.
You're welcome.
Any other committee reports? If not, we'll move on. Are there any topics from the floor tonight?
I have one.
Okay.
From Mike Peel regarding the Spencer sewer drainage basin.
So it sounds like Dale Webb knows more about this than I do, but at least a proper terminology. So in order for us to develop the Nehalem View property, which is off Mellinger Road that goes down to the trailer park, which involves the Spencer sewer drainage basin, needs to be rerouted to pump station 3 before that can be developed. It sounds like it's kind of already in the plan, but it sounds like it actually needs to be activated for us to make that development work.
Josette, do you want to respond to that? I don't know much about what he's talking about there. Or
So what I believe he's talking about, which maybe Dale and Susan remember, but when Photo Solutions was talking about rerouting down on the industrial mill property, we had talked about that all of that Louisiana Hill comes down to a point at the corner, kind of where the web bench is, and then comes backwards. But there was not a T there like it needed to be. And I believe that's what, did you talk to Jeff about that, or Matt, or who did you talk to about that, Mike?
I talked to Matt, the planner. He was the one who explained it to me.
Well, Ben happened to be in the room, and Ben chimed in and stated all that stuff. I don't know a whole lot about those drainage basins.
You're right, correct.
So that was a project that was slated to happen back when Photo Solutions, and then when Photo Solutions moved out of town, there wasn't kind of a momentum to do the project because it was kind of going to be future use, which Nehalem View would be future use. So that's something that needs to come back on our radar. Potentially, we could use sewer SDCs, but we'd have to get that project started, so to speak, with engineering and to start the steps of that. So he's bringing it to you guys from topics from the floor. We can easily bring it back. Staff could bring it back to you guys at your next meeting for a discussion item where you can talk about it and potentially put funds there if that's something you're motivated to do or would like staff to do for you.
Go ahead, Counselor Webb.
Yeah, and I think we talked potentially two options. Because I know where I'm at drains, it goes all the way back to the pump station 2. And if we take and do that Spencer line, take these houses off of that force main, then we open up some capacity. I think JR also had an idea or heard that once we have to, I think the capacity problem is at the pump. It's not the force main itself. He was thinking there's a potential that we could force into the force main from the Peel property, but that would be a pump station type setup and must have a backflow device or something. So I think there's several options there to get them online. And then I think the third option was we talked about a pump station pumping up to the top of the hill and putting in that big line that's going to service everything up there, Louisiana country, gravity back down to pump station 3. So, yeah, it's going to be, the engineers are going to have to get involved and see what's the most logical way to do it and which is most cost effective. Good one for the Public Works Committee to chew on.
Yeah, did they want to start meeting?
I didn't get that from George when I talked to him about a week ago.
Dang it.
I don't know if they have a quorum. But we won't let that stop us.
But if you guys would like to make a consensus, staff will work on bringing that back to your next meeting.
So I guess the question is, Mike, is that property, are you looking to move forward then with development out there? I mean, that would be the driver behind this.
So what the deal is, every logger who does a development usually goes broke. I would like to sell it and have a professional take it over because they know what they're doing, because I want it done right and done right for Vernonia. But in order to sell it, I have to have the sewer go somewhere.
Well, I mean, I'm only one counselor, but we don't want to have that amount of inventory in our buildable lands and not develop it. We want it on the tax rolls too. So I would envision we would work towards finding that solution. I mean, we've talked about it, but that would develop. Have you been able to solve your 2 road onto Mellinger issue?
So in our original traffic plan, Mellinger Road was the main road in and out of there. We even did the traffic study on it. I spent like $35,000 on the original development part of that, but that was our original access, and they were going to have us improve the road at Stony Point and Kesey. But I'll go back through my files, but that was our original route in and out of there.
Okay, we were under the impression that you were a little bit roadblocked. They were wanting you to build a bridge or have a second exit into Mellinger.
We do need a second. We need ingress and egress, but Mellinger was one of them, but we're working on number 2.
Okay.
which would be through the trailer park again.
Oh, down through the trailer park.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if our city administrators talked to you. There might be another option too, but
I haven't, but I can.
yeah.
Thank you, Mike, for bringing
You
this
guys-
forward. And
Well-
can we get a general consensus from council to direct staff to look into this issue? I know we're already kind of on it, Mike, but we can further look into this situation for you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm fine with that. This is Council Wagner.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner.
I'm
Got a
good with
thumbs
it.
up from Councilor Webb. Councilor McNair,
Yeah.
Councilor Allen.
I think it's good to start the process, especially if the boundaries are going to move and the city boundaries are going to move in that area. I think it's part of the comprehensive plan before we start willy-nilly developing up in there. So I think it's all ties together. So I'm willing to help out and do some work on it, whatever I can do to help.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other topics from the floor tonight? Okay. We'll move right into the public hearing. This public hearing is now open at 7:18 p.m. on November 2nd, 2020 for consideration of Resolution 2020-14, a resolution initiating withdrawal of territory from the city of Vernonia. Order of hearing. The public hearing will follow a certain order. It is staff will present a staff report of the proposal. Next, testimony will be allowed for those in favor of the proposal, following with testimony in opposition of the proposal, then comments that are neither in favor nor against the application. Staff will then have an opportunity for rebuttal. No new evidence will be allowed during rebuttal. Therefore, it is important that you clearly and concisely state your full testimony at the time you are allowed to speak. Each speaker will step to the dais and clearly state his or her name, mailing address for the record prior to your testimony. No speaker will be interrupted except by questions by city council members. No testimony will be entered into the record if spoken from the position of the general audience. Those participating in the hearing will have the opportunity to request a continuance to address any new evidence submitted in favor of the application, or if time does not allow testimony to be completed at this hearing. If no continuance is requested, those participating will have the opportunity to request that the record be kept open for at least 7 days to allow for written rebuttal of testimony presented at this hearing. Otherwise, the hearing will be closed and the matter will be returned to the hearing body for deliberation. Does any counselor have any ex parte contact to declare tonight? Does any member of the hearing body have a conflict of interest to declare? Does anyone want to challenge a counselor's right to consider this application? And now the city planner will submit a report. It's all yours, Matt.
Thank you, Mayor, fellow councilors. Matt Straight presenting for staff tonight. So what you have before you tonight is kind of an odd duck. So let's walk through it and I'll tell you what we're looking at and why we're looking at it. So back in October, we had a workshop with the city council where we presented an outline for where we can revise our urban growth boundary and kind of change which properties were and weren't in the city. And at that workshop, we explained that there were several different steps to this process. We couldn't just do it all at once. You can't just hit the gavel on the counter and boom, make all these changes. You got to do it in certain steps. And the first step is before you hear tonight. And the intent was to push on with that right after our October 2019 workshop. But between the city's business picking up quite a bit, we got a lot more permits coming in, and COVID hitting and really kind of razzling everything. It's been a little while getting to this, so I apologize for its tardiness, but here we are before you tonight. We've been working on an alternatives analysis as part of this whole venture. Doesn't play into tonight's item, but we're going to use that as part of our UGB process a little bit down the road. So to refresh the memory of City Council, what we're really trying to do here is kind of change the urban growth boundaries on our city a little bit. And we were directed from City Council to remove the city-owned timber property from the city and then remove it from the UGB, to remove some floodway properties that are south of Anderson Park from the city and from the UGB eventually, to remove the property generally south of Noakes. I say generally because there's some exceptions there, but generally south of Noakes Road. We're going to remove that from the UGB. And then we're going to add the property into the UGB that is just south of the property Mike Peel was just talking about and north of the school. That whole area there that's surrounded by our urban growth boundary today, we want to fill all that in. And then there's also a little tiny sliver next to the school that we're going to fix that's technically an unincorporated county island. That's going to be part of this property too. And then there's 3 additional properties on the east side of the city, just south of Heather Lane, that we were talking about pulling in as well as part of this process. So as I said before, the process features several different steps and each has their own distinct separate process. So the one we have before you tonight is the first step, which is de-annexation. We have to pull 3 properties out of the city, leave them in the UGB, to pull them out of the city before we can move forward on that. So the action we're talking about tonight isn't going to change the urban growth boundary at all. All it's going to do is start the process to initiate the process to de-annex these 3 properties that we just talked about. The de-annexation process is dictated by a very specific state statute that prescribes very unusual, quite frankly, steps that we have to follow in order to do this. And there are basically 3 steps. The first step is before you tonight, and this is we have to initiate de-annexing these properties from the city. And we have to do that by resolution. And so we have a resolution before you tonight, which does nothing but start the process. And the idea is we want to invite as much public input in this as possible. Now, for what we're doing, pulling out these 3 properties, a lot of public participation isn't really that critical. This code was really designed for large-scale de-annexations. What we're doing isn't going to ruffle anybody's feathers, but we have to go through the process nonetheless. So the resolution that you have before you tonight will start the process. It'll kick it off. And then we also tonight have to schedule the first full-blown hearing where we're going to consider the de-annexation. The staff is proposing that we make that for November 16th, coming up here in a couple of weeks. At that point, we do step 2, which is to hold another hearing like we're doing tonight. But this time, people can show up and they can request changes to the boundaries of the de-annexations that we're proposing. Again, we're not anticipating that's going to happen. Matter of fact, it would be exceedingly rare. But at that point, the city council will enter an order or declare on the record that the previous resolution still stands, and then we'll have to set a 3rd public hearing. Again, this is all coming from state code. And that's where you'll finally adopt an ordinance at the end that will actually remove those properties from the city. And we have to make sure that that 3rd hearing is 20 to 50 days away from our 2nd hearing. So we are proposing, Stephanie is proposing, that we hold that hearing on December 7th, or we could even do December 21st, but you guys probably don't want to meet on December 21st, I'm guessing. So maybe December 7th is a good target date. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I have a suggested motion here. which is the city council can determine that it is in the public's best interest to withdraw the territory, those 3 properties we talked about, identified in the resolution. And city council can initiate the de-annexation process through the adoption of resolution 2020-14 and set the matter for a public hearing on the November 16th. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you have because this one is a bit complicated.
Are there any questions for Matt from the council? Councilor Webb.
So I think we covered this, but so the 20 acres, the city timber, our thoughts are we can get better protection for it as timberland through the county zone designation than current.
That is correct. And we've talked that over with the planning department at the county, and they agree that putting that into a forestry designation is going to be a lot more beneficial for us going into the future. And it could be developed, but it would be a real bear. It'd be real expensive based on the topography to get all the infrastructure up there. And even then, based on the topography, you're probably not going to get the lot yield that our current paperwork seems to think that we will. And that's why it's really skewing our residential numbers, because it's really not that buildable.
Follow-up question. Did we put out questionnaires to citizens in the urban growth boundary outside the city limits? We asked them if they wanted to annex into the city. Have we got any results on that?
We did. We got 2 letters, and that's actually going to be the subject of the next step, because that technically has nothing to do with de-annexing the 3 properties from the city. It's a very distinct step, but we did get some letters, and we'll be sending those on to you folks to review in a bit. There's only one fellow who's a little bit upset about it.
Yeah, I'm done.
Any other questions from the council?
I got one, Mayor.
Okay, JR.
Matt, did you reach out to Bethany and Joseph Martinez in the last couple of weeks about this?
Are those the people who own the property south of the park?
Correct. I see their name here as the owners.
No, I reached out to them, gosh, it was a year ago now, and I haven't touched base with them again since then. I'm more than happy to reach out to them again and give them a call, make sure they're still in line with this process.
They are online tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, are they? Yeah, that's even better.
Okay, well, that's great. All right, well, that answers that.
Any other council questions? Does any participant tonight have a question for the staff?
Yeah, this is Joseph Martinez.
Yes, Mr. Martinez.
I'm disappointed that I wasn't notified of this a little sooner other than a year ago. And I'm looking forward to the call when we can talk about this more.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other participant questions? Well, if not, we'll move into testimony in favor. Testimony will now be heard from those in favor of the application. Each speaker will have 5 minutes. Please step forward, stating your name and mailing address for the record, then proceed with your testimony. Moving on to testimony in opposition. Testimony will now be heard from those opposed to the application. Each speaker will have 5 minutes. Please step forward, stating your name and mailing address for the record, then proceed with your testimony. Moving on to neutral testimony. Would anyone like to speak who is neither in favor nor opposed? to the application. Please step forward, stating your name and mailing address for the record, then proceed with your statement. Final call for testimony. Does anyone else wish to submit oral testimony before the applicant has the final opportunity to respond? Susan, Counselor Wagner.
I just have a question. So Mr. Martinez stated that he was looking forward to further discussion about this. But I'm concerned that if he has concerns or objections, that this hearing is the time that he should be making those known, rather than just waiting until we have a conversation about what's already being put in place after the fact. I guess that was a question / statement.
Well, I gave opportunity in this hearing just a little bit ago for those who wish to talk about it in opposition or in favor. And I didn't hear anything, so I'm not a mind reader, so.
Again, that's why I asked the question, is that if they don't understand the process, I just want to make sure while we're at final call for testimony that they have an opportunity to say something if that is their intent. They may be okay with it. I don't know. I just want to make sure that.
And to clarify, there will be another opportunity at the next hearing for them to provide input as well, because it's a public hearing, just like this one.
So you're gonna have two?
Yeah, so technically they had two more opportunities to provide input. That's true.
Well, this is Joe here now. I didn't understand that I was supposed to speak a minute ago. Being that I have no idea really what you guys are talking about. I understand that you're trying to change part of our land out of the city into the county, it sounds like. And like I said, being that I haven't been notified of this, I would say no at this point.
I actually had a conversation with your wife about a year ago, and she said that you were looking to do some rearranging of parcel lines. And right now, the property that you own south of the river is in two different jurisdictions, which makes that really difficult to do. And we have limitations on lot sizes that you can do for the property that's in the city. So she said she was thrilled at the idea of removing those two smaller lots that are in the city. That way you could do property kind of rearranging of the lot lines with the county on all of those lots with just one jurisdiction.
Yeah, that was a year ago, and I wasn't involved in that. So that's where my problem lies. So like I said, being that I don't really know what this is going to change with our property, and if I say now about it, then I would say no. I think someone else had mentioned, it would have been nice to have a little recap call or some kind of notification about this, a few weeks ago.
I will back up to honor your decision on this, your opinion on this, Mr. Martinez. I will back up to the testimony in opposition, and you can state your name and your mailing address just to get it on the record. And if you'd like to go ahead and state that opinion again, I'd be glad to let you do that.
So my name is Joseph Martinez. Address is 59201 Sword Place, Vernonia, Oregon, 97064. And from what little I understand about this that we're talking about, I just know that it involves my property and that I've only been aware of it myself for the better part of a couple of days. I understand that it talks about changing part of our property from city to county, it sounds like. And I'm hearing that there was a call made a year ago or so to my wife about this. It doesn't sound like there was much clarification at the time of what this was. But if I have to say my opinion now, I'm saying I would vote no, because I do not know the specifics and details about this. So pretty much I'm in the dark about it. So if I have to make a decision now, it's no.
Okay, Josette?
So Mac, can you share with Mr. Martinez where he can get more information about that? I mean, you can always come in to talk to us about it, Joe, if you'd like to, but also the paperwork.
Yeah, I'm happy to send a staff report. I'm happy to meet with Mr. Martinez and explain to him what we're proposing and why, and how that benefits him, quite frankly. Yeah, if it pleases the city council, you could actually vote to initiate it tonight, even with that property being part of it, and then I can have a conversation with Mr. Martinez. If he still feels at the end of our conversation that it's not a good idea, he can certainly come back to you on the November 16th and express his desire at that point to not have this property move forward that way. Tonight's action won't be binding in any way. It's doing nothing but initiating.
Would you like to go to City Hall, Mr. Martinez, and set up a meeting with our city planner and city administrator for further clarification on that?
Yes, I would.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you for being on the call tonight.
You're welcome.
I think I'm down at my final call for testimony. Does anyone else wish to submit oral testimony before the applicant has the final opportunity to respond? Would the applicant like to respond to any of the facts introduced by those opposing the application or any statements made regarding the proposal? Is there a request by any of the participants of the hearing body to continue this hearing to another date and time to consider new evidence or because of the complexity of this proposal? Then this meeting is closed to testimony and new evidence at 7:40 p.m. We'll go to council deliberation now. Of resolution 2020-14. Councilor Webb.
Okay, looks like we might have had a little failing there on notifications process there, with Mr. Martinez. I'm kind of confident once you explain it to him, I think he'll be probably in favor, but that's his decision. And I want to make sure we understand if we initiate tonight, we still got hearings, we can withdraw his piece if he's against it. But we'd still want to do our 20-acre timberland and the other third piece. And refresh my mind, the other piece.
2 of those pieces are Mr. Martinez's. The third piece is the.
So, okay, there are 2 parcels on him and 1 on us. So
Correct.
we'd still want to do the 20 acres.
Josette?
Matt, can you remind council, what is the requirement of the property owner or the city to stand by wishes? Is that a legal requirement? Like if someone says no, is that a no for the city?
No, the city has the right to de-annex the property even if the property owner doesn't desire that. Now, that doesn't mean that the city council can't respect their wishes and pull it from the de-annexation, but they're under obligation to do so.
Okay.
Councilor Webb?
And refresh my memory, he's got partially in city limits and the UGB.
The 2 properties that Mr. Martinez owns are 2 of several properties that he owns down there south of the river. And the 2 that are south of the river that are in the city limits, they're both in the city limits and within the UGB, but they are both within floodway, not even floodplain, but floodway, which means we couldn't issue a building permit in there if we wanted to for either one of those properties.
But our goal was freeing up some urban growth boundary acreage so we can move to a different location. So
that's right. Since those are unbuildable properties, we're hoping to eventually swap that property for property up by the school, which is very buildable and will increase walkability for the kids to get to the school.
Not to mention his taxes would be cheaper.
Oh, his taxes, yeah, would be much cheaper because it'd be county taxes instead of city taxes on property that he couldn't build on anyhow, if it were city.
Right. If it's county, he might be able to do something.
That's right. Because the rule that you can't build in a floodway is the city rule. It's not a FEMA rule. FEMA provides ways to augment the floodway limits and such, but Vernonia has a higher standard, and so we have no way to build in a floodway at all.
Right.
Any other council discussion? Stephanie, do you want us to move on this resolution now or wait till resolutions and ordinances?
Wait till ordinances and resolutions. If you guys are comfortable flipping back and forth in the packet, because it is only in the packet once.
Okay, we'll move on to the next public hearing then. This public hearing is now open at 7:45 p.m. on November 2nd, 2020 for consideration of a proposed zoning code text change, file number PA 19-01. The public hearing will follow a certain order. Staff will present a staff report of the proposal. Next, testimony will be allowed for those in favor of the proposal, following with testimony in opposition of the proposal, then comments that are neither in favor nor against the application. Staff will then have an opportunity for rebuttal. No new evidence will be allowed during rebuttal. Therefore, it is important that you clearly and concisely state your full testimony at the time you are allowed to speak. Each speaker will step to the dais and clearly state his or her name and mailing address for the record prior to your testimony. No speaker will be interrupted except for questions by City Council members. No testimony will be entered into the record as spoken from the position of the general audience. Those participating in the hearing will have the opportunity to request a continuance to address any new evidence submitted in favor of the application, or if time does not allow testimony to be completed at this hearing. If no continuance is requested, those participating will have the opportunity to request that the record be kept open for at least 7 days to allow for written rebuttal of testimony presented at this hearing. Otherwise, the hearing will be closed and the matter will be returned to the hearing body for deliberation. Does any counselor have any ex parte contact to declare? Does any member of the hearing body have a conflict of interest to declare? Does anyone want to challenge a counselor's right to consider this application? If not, I'll turn it over to the city planner for a report.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Fellow councilors, Matt Straight presenting again for staff tonight. Now, this project before you has kind of a long history. It's been bounced around quite a bit. Now, this is the parking fix. Now, I want to remind you, this isn't a global parking fix for all of downtown. This was designed to address one specific problem. The buildings in the downtown are basically built with the building covering their entire lot, and they have no room for people to park. But if they want to change their use in any way, our code puts handcuffs on them and requires them to provide parking. And that would mean they would have to get property off-site to provide that parking, because a lot of them don't have any property on-site. So we went to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission agreed on an extra fee that would be charged on an annual basis to anybody who needed parking spaces, and then we would use that money for maintenance purposes on some brand new official city parking lots. That went through Planning Commission. We brought it to City Council. City Council pointed out Ordinance 866, which quite honestly staff didn't know existed at all. So City Council said, why don't you take this back down to the Planning Commission, have them look through 866, and Councilor Allen actually asked us to look at parking in general as well on a more global scale. He thought we might have too much parking required in our code, and so he wanted us to take a look at that. So we went back down to the Planning Commission with those two bullet points that we needed to go through. Check out the Ordinance 886 and see if there's anything valuable in there, and B, check out parking to see if our standards were too high. And so we did that with our Planning Commission. Planning Commission felt that the parking standards for the city were appropriate and they didn't touch that. But while readdressing this, they came up with a little bit more novel idea for parking, and they thought we should just go ahead and move forward and waive all parking requirements for everybody in the downtown, period. No parking required as far as our code is concerned. Now, they fully understood the implications of that action. They knew that if people had a parking lot and we no longer required parking, those people could sell that lot and build on it and not need any parking spaces whatsoever. The Planning Commission was aware of that. They thought that was a benefit because it was acting as a tool to redevelop areas of downtown. And it didn't mean that people weren't allowed to have parking. So if somebody came in, Dollar General comes in and wants to build a building downtown and they want to add 100 spaces, they certainly can. Those are allowed. If they do, they have to follow the code, but they certainly can. And all of this was contingent upon one thing, though. The Planning Commission wanted more assurity from the city that 3 different lots would be officially designated as city parking lots, even though people have been unofficially using them as parking lots since the big flood. And that is the property that we talked about before, property down there behind the old movie theater, and then the one across the street from that. the exact properties we talked about before, but they added in another lot over next to the gas station across the street from the park that is also currently gravel and has been used for parking for quite some time during overflow events, things of that nature. And so we've added a resolution. I talked this over with our attorney and he says this is the right way to do it. We've added a resolution to our packet that would officially declare those three city parking lots. We can't do much with them anyway because they're FEMA buyout properties. We can't even pave them, quite frankly. They have to be gravel, but it would officially make them parking lots. Another thing I wanted to bring up was there has been some talk recently about using one of those properties as a trailhead. I talked with Josette about this. We think there's no conflict there to have that serve as the trailhead and as an official city parking lot. The trailhead wasn't going to take up that whole property, maybe just a corner of it. And so just a couple of parking spaces. And the idea of having that serve double duty would work just fine. We did talk about with the Planning Commission how we would deal with maintenance. And the Planning Commission felt that the maintenance costs were going to be so insignificant that we could find some other way to address that, either through the general fund, or we could find some way to have the business license fee increased to offset that cost. But really the maintenance costs that we're talking about are a few truckloads of gravel every 5 or 6 years, and that's about it. We probably also want to make some signs to point people to these official city lots, but those signs also wouldn't be very expensive and shouldn't be difficult to absorb in the general fund city budget, as far as the Planning Commission said. So what we're bringing forward to you tonight is a code change that is doing nothing but erasing the need for any parking in the downtown area, but clarifying that if you do use parking downtown, you still have to build to the city standards. Your stalls still have to be 9 feet long and 4.5 feet wide, 5 feet wide. So they still have to follow the code requirements. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. The city council has basically 3 options before you today. You can either approve the amendments that are proposed by the Planning Commission, you could deny those amendments proposed by the Planning Commission, or you could continue this off calendar today in order to have some more workshops at the city council level to talk more about this and try and iron out any kinks that you think there might be in that proposal. So that concludes staff's presentation.
Can I ask a clarifying question? If they deny it, does that just fall us back on 886?
Well, 886 needed
because 886 still stands, right?
Yeah, 886 wasn't implementable on its face because it required additional studies to be done by the city before it could be implemented. So yeah, 886 would still stand, and they'd have to direct the staff to go ahead and move forward with those missing studies.
Thank you, Matt. Does the council have any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor.
Any participant? Oh, go ahead, Councilor Allen, Councilor Webb.
Did I understand you right? If Dollar General moves in, buys out a section of town, they would be required to put in parking to code?
No,
they would not be.
What I meant to say was if Dollar General moved into the downtown zone, they would not be required to build any parking, but they probably wouldn't want to build in downtown unless they built their own parking. So if somebody wants to build parking, could they? Absolutely. That is still very allowable, very consistent with the code, but not required.
Okay, or is there any other type of business that maybe had 50 employees in the old bowling alley, and now we don't have parking at City Hall? So, okay, I think I understand where we're coming from.
The Planning Commission felt that if we actually had a parking problem, and this did create problems down the road, we could simply try to address those problems down the road. But they felt that having a parking problem would be a very good problem to have, because that would mean a booming downtown.
Kind of hard to put the horse back in the barn sometimes, though.
Well,
We'll get into that when we discuss
no,
it.
Kidding.
Any other council questions? Any participant have any questions for staff? I'm going to go ahead and read this. Testimony in favor will now be heard from those in favor of the application. Each speaker will have 5 minutes. Please step forward, stating your name, mailing address for the record, then proceed with your testimony. Testimony will now be heard for those opposed to the application. Each speaker will have 5 minutes. Please step forward, stating your name and mailing address for the record, then proceed with your testimony. Neutral testimony. Would anyone like to speak who is neither in favor nor opposed to the application? Please step forward, stating your name and mailing address for the record, then proceed with your statement. Final call for testimony. Does anyone else wish to submit oral testimony before the applicant has the final opportunity to respond? Applicant rebuttal. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the facts introduced by those opposing the application or any statements made regarding the proposal? Extend the hearing. Is there a request by any of the participants or the hearing body to continue this hearing to another date and time to consider new evidence or because of the complexity of this proposal? This public hearing is now closed to testimony and new evidence at 7:58 p.m. Council deliberation. On PA 19-01.
I got something, Rick. Mayor Hobart, sorry.
Go ahead, Councilor Allen.
I actually attended the 29th Planning Commission meeting. It was my first time. I found it rather enjoyable and enlightening, and they seemed to really dig into things. And Matt's a hell of a salesman, pretty fast talker, and they weren't afraid to stop Matt, slow down, back up, and go through things on at least the issues that I was witnessing. And I've read through this latest draft proposal about parking word for word, and although it does have some things that could happen, I think the good outweighs the bad, and I'm pretty sure I'm okay with going forward with this myself. Maybe I do wish there was a clause that you couldn't tear down buildings to make parking, but that's something we could talk about. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other council discussion?
This is Councilor Wagner. I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for their willingness to revisit it yet again and come up with this. And I think I echo the sentiment that this was well thought out, and I do appreciate that it sounds like a viable solution and options have been brought forward to us this evening.
Councilor Webb.
So I'm a little perplexed myself because it wasn't too long ago we were sitting here debating this. We were saying there was significant cost to maintain. We're talking about the issues of fairness of the properties that had to build already have parking, and you know how there's kind of a advantage for those not to have to create any parking spaces. I think there's a real concern around this. Somebody moves in here who's got a lot of employees, which is employees are great, but they just jam our downtown up. You know, and everybody's going to want to park on Main Street. Made a couple of notes. You know, they're talking about potentially adding something to the business license for maintenance on the parking, which I'm not totally against that idea, but there again, we run up against the property owners that already have the parking and paid for parking, and some that are leasing parking from others. We're going to have to deal with that issue of it wouldn't be equitable to be charging them for parking when they've already spent the money. So that would be a concern. It might even be a legal question at that point. Yeah, I don't agree that taking a parking lot out and building a building. I don't know. I mean, I guess if the store were to disappear as a business and we didn't need that parking, or the post office, then it's viable. But if the store owner decides that he's selling and he just sells that lot to somebody else, and the next store owner doesn't have parking, that's probably not a good scenario. I was wondering, can we put some verbiage in there, or it doesn't cover us if somebody comes into an existing building, but if like Dollar General were to move into town, that would be new construction. Could we put verbiage in that says somebody comes in, does new construction in our downtown zone, that then they would have to provide this off-street parking? That would maybe make this less scary for me. And that was actually a suggestion from a former counselor.
Counselor Wagner.
So, you know, I know there's one person in town, a business owner in town who was forced to create a parking lot. And I know that caused a lot of concern, and then people following that did not. And I know that, so I guess I should declare he is also technically my boss. So not a conflict, because I'm actually speaking opposite his opinion. So, I mean, it might be a conflict, but I'm still speaking opposite his opinion. You know, people move into a town or they buy a business and everything's going to change. The things that are set in place 10 years ago when somebody may have purchased a business, and then somebody coming into town today and buying a business, the economy is different. Their plans are different. I buy a house, 15 years ago, and the market drops out, so I lose money. I mean, there's all these different things that occur every day as it relates to things changing and things affecting our town. And I don't think yes, we do need to be thoughtful and pay attention and take into account all of the different potential ripple effect issues that this creates. And I am not dismissing Councillor Webb's concerns at all. But for me, I think that having a requirement for future businesses to provide off-street parking is not an option because there just isn't that much space. And for us to have a vibrant and successful downtown, I think the opportunity for either somebody taking over a business, changing it into something else, or purchasing a lot somebody might want to change from parking to a building, as long as they are keeping in line with our planning ideals and what their building's supposed to look like, and making sure maybe to also encourage either a chamber or something, a business organization, to start having the business people working together to encourage each other to be using the off-street parking that the city's providing through off-street parking lots, instead of having the employees parking in front of the buildings. Things like that. That's just something I wanted to throw out there and contribute to the conversation.
Thank you, Susan. Josette?
I just have a couple questions. So JR had said something to you, Matt, about putting in language of not allowing someone to tear down a building to create parking. Is that something you've seen in any of your other communities? Can you even regulate if someone can tear it down or not?
No, I haven't seen anything like that in any other codes.
Okay. And then my other question was to Susan. You said someone was required to do it and then other people weren't required to do it. And can you share more on that?
So I may be misunderstanding the process of the businesses that have come in much more recently. But when Grey Dawn Gallery built their gallery, they were required to have that entire parking lot behind them dedicated to their building for parking.
Okay.
And then my understanding is with the ordinance that was in place that you're supposed to do that when you have a change of business structure, correct?
Correct.
So,
Change
but
of
that
use.
wasn't occurring. So that's just, I mean, that I was just trying to point out that it's not always equal, and it's not even always equitable as to what happens. It's all determined by when you make a choice to do something, what is in place at that time, or what's even feasible or reasonable at that time. Did that make any sense?
You don't have a specific instance of someone that didn't have to do it?
I can't think of I don't know, because I wasn't on planning and I haven't paid as much attention to things going into downtown. I know that probably that was the only building that was built as a small business downtown.
And
Well,
change of use, Matt, just remind us all that that's when it's something different than what existed there before. So if a restaurant stays a restaurant, that's fine. But if a restaurant turns into a clothing boutique, that's different.
And that's why we had issues with the Brunsman building when they put in that new mini mall that had all those different uses in there. And we went over and over this with them, and we were really backed into where our only opportunity, our only chance to deal with that on the Brunsman building was to just deny it. But we really didn't want to do that. We really wanted new businesses in downtown. And so we added a condition of approval to the Brunsman project that said, you're going to have to work with the city to create a new parking requirement that's going to allow you to park in a city municipal lot a block or two away. And when we do that, you're going to agree in advance to pay whatever fee you have to pay in order to offset the cost of the fact that you have no parking whatsoever. And we've since added that condition to a couple of different projects. And all of those people are kind of waiting with bated breath to see what happens here. If you tonight decide to go ahead and eliminate parking requirements in downtown, they're just off the hook. End of story. That condition of approval is satisfied instantly. It's over. But if you do something else and implement some other kind of fee, then they're still required by condition to pay that fee if and when we decide what it is.
I like the statement from the past counselor that if it's a new building, it makes parking. But if it's an existing footprint, then it's grandfathered in.
Nope.
Can't
That's
do
not what
it.
the code says.
You can't do it?
No, if you're an existing building, if you're changing your use in an existing building, you owe us parking. If you had a permit already and you were operating legally and you changed from one restaurant to another restaurant, you're okay. Then you don't need to do anything.
No, what Dale was saying, a past counselor proposed was that if you build new construction, you would build parking. If you're in an existing building, even if there's a change of use, you're grandfathered in.
No, I think what Councilor Webb wanted was if somebody builds a new building, they would then be required to add parking. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Sorry, got it. Yeah, we could change the code to reflect that if you wanted. We could even put a size limitation on it, because maybe a new building like the Grey Dawn Gallery would be small enough that you wouldn't want to require parking. But if a Dollar General came in that was over, say, 10,000 square feet, maybe then they owe you some parking. We could do something like that.
I just have one other statement about their request for the 3 parking lots, if council moves forward with this. The gravel lot next to Mini Mart is already slated as Spencer Park overflow parking. So when they're asking for this request, are they proposing that as downtown free parking? Because the goal long term is that people parking there would pay at the kiosk. That's in the parking areas from 2017. I have what the council at that time outlined, and that was going to be a fee-based parking lot, not a free, just to keep that in the discussion.
The resolution in your packet tonight wouldn't preclude you from doing that. It doesn't use the word free or imply that the parking should be free. So if you wanted to make that a paid parking lot down the road, that wouldn't be inconsistent with the approval tonight.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey,
any
Matt.
other? Go ahead, JR.
Matt, you were talking about you couldn't stop someone from demoing a building to create parking, but what Lake Oswego did to stop demo or to curb demo was, I believe they put a $40 or $50 or $25,000 fee to demo a structure that was not condemned.
There's been an awful lot of talk about that lately because the state passed that legislation that requires certain size cities to implement middle housing, whether they like it or not, and to basically say there's no such thing as a zone that can only have single family houses. And so a lot of cities have been trying to evade that by saying, well, we're going to make a $50,000 fee for a demo permit. And the trouble with that is you have to make a nexus, a legal nexus between the fee you're charging and the impacts of that fee. I'm not sure how Lake Oswego did that. I could go back and look. But I know that a few city attorneys in a couple other jurisdictions, Tigard and Wood Village, have both said that we can't make a fee intentionally punitive for the sake of being punitive. It has to have a nexus to some kind of impact. It's kind of a Nolan argument.
Okay, thank you for that information. And back to the point where Councilor Webb was concerned about a Dollar Tree or a big company coming in with over 50 employees, which I don't know has happened since 1950s, but I could be wrong on that. What happened up in Sandpoint, I believe we talked about this a long time ago. I was talking to Will, their city attorney up there. They tried doing this mandating parking in their old town. It's kind of like Vernonia with not a lot of room, and a company come in and wanted to do an IT business, and they bought a big building, and then they hit them with, you got to put all this parking. So they bought the 2 buildings next door and tore them down and said, there's your parking. And they went, oh my God, this looks horrible. What do we do? And it was too late. So then they went to a downtown free parking area in the downtown area. And from what the information I got from them, it's been a real boom for them. But their layout is slightly different. They have a big parking area. I think it's even 2-story if I remember right. It's pretty darn close. So, it's not exact comparing, but it gives you an idea what can happen if you say it's a new company coming in and you're demanding parking, and there you go. I'll just buy the bowling alley and tear it down.
I think one way to address that could be to write into the ordinance that they have to have their staff parking. Their staff has to use municipal parking. And if you did want to force them to add parking, you could say just parking for your guests, and then we could have a parking calculation specifically for that. And that could even have a not to exceed amount. Say you have to add parking, but never more than 10 spaces. That way it never becomes so oppressive that you'd have to remove a building to do it. I'm just throwing ideas out there.
Right. I think I kind of like this, just make it no parking. It's just become such a 20-year nightmare. But I also, Councilor Wagner has a good point that we've talked about it before, is other people have been made to do things. And so it's kind of a catch-22, and I guess we're going to have to make a decision on which one's the lesser of 2 evils here.
Well, the Planning Commission discussed equity quite a bit, and they came to the conclusion that even if somebody was forced to put in a parking lot previously, by basically giving them that property back now and saying you don't need to have parking anymore, you can develop it, that's addressing the equity issue, because now they're getting some real estate back that they can do whatever they want with, and they don't have to go for just parking anymore. And they thought made it kind of once out.
Josette.
So Matt, did the Planning Commission I'm thinking, sorry, with the counselor's view on it, did they discuss what this effect would have on the residences within the downtown zone? Because there's a lot of the downtown zone that is houses and not businesses. And if everything, we have a boom and everything is built out, are we going to end up like Portland with an A permit to park on certain sections of the street, and then the houses would have A permits so that their parking wouldn't be taken over? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Sure, no, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, the Planning Commission did discuss that, but they were kind of looking at it with 50-year goggles on, saying that those homes really were intended to transition from residential to a downtown use eventually. And so if they were burdened with parking, that may further the process of that turning into commercial property.
Yikes.
Any other council discussion for the staff? If not, we'll move on. Consent agenda for acceptance.
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
are you moving on to which one of those options? What's the majority of council want to do with the option?
Well, we could
Consensus to move on and approve it, to deny it, or to talk about it in a work session? with some of these other alternatives? What are you guys thinking?
What's the wish of the council? What's the thumbs down mean, Counselor Webb?
I'd say denial, try again. Do some more fine tuning.
Okay.
So is that a continue off calendar or send it back to planning, Dale?
Well,
Like, you guys do some more fine
I'm
tuning?
probably gonna get outvoted here, but yeah, I think there needs to be that safeguard for something big moves in here. We don't have any parking requirement. It could be an absolute disaster. That's my big concern.
Counselor Wagner.
So with the available land in downtown, what is the largest building that could be built? Presuming they don't buy an entire block and tear down 5 properties.
Oh, geez, Josette, you'd probably be a lot better off to answer that than I would be.
So I'm not following your question, Susan.
The biggest
Like,
vacant lot in
if they
downtown?
used up the existing parking?
No, so if today some company drove to Vernonia and said, oh, I want to build the biggest building I can build in downtown on the available inventory today, how big could that building be? Presuming they did not buy an entire block and tear it down.
So I don't think there's a size maximum.
Well, and there's
They
just
could
hardly
absolutely buy an entire block and tear it down.
Yeah, currently there might be a vacant lot or two that could accommodate maybe a 7,000 square foot building.
I'm sorry, how many square feet, Matt?
I said there's a couple of vacant lots in downtown that aren't FEMA restricted, and you might be able to build a 7,000 square foot building on those lots, maybe.
You said
7.
7? Okay. Sorry, my camera's way too close apparently.
If Randy sold his parking lot, just the 2 in between him and the bakery, it would be a 10,000 square foot building.
Joe said, I think the hardware store would be the biggest chunk probably available with 3 or 4 parcels there.
Which hardware store, JR?
Vernonia Hardware, right across
Jay's
from
or Craig's?
Yeah, Jay's.
Oh.
Isn't he got
Yeah,
2 or 3 parcels
hold on, let me
there?
measure it. Yeah, he's 11,000.
Okay, follow-up question. There are building code and restrictions as to what you can build in downtown, correct?
Sure.
So go back to what is the likelihood of anybody truly building a 10,000 or 7,000 square foot building in downtown? I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't put it in. I mean, I'm just trying to not have to send this back to the planning commission saying, start over.
I think on downtown code, really you want them, they have to be close to, what, 15 feet is the maximum setback off the property line. They have to have some windows. on the street facing side, so much percentage of windows, and that's about the only requirement, right, Matt? I mean, it's not gonna be like a fancy, expensive
Well,
front.
there's a requirement for some kind of pedestrian interface, like a plaza, but that could be as simple as a bench or some hanging baskets. Matter of fact, the code does specify hanging baskets could solve that to give you a pedestrian interface. But the idea is that you build it right out against the street. Yeah.
Do we have any height restriction?
I think it's
I think
three
it can go
stories.
3 stories.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 3 stories, but I can look.
No, it is.
So 10,000 square feet turns into 30.
Mhm. I think the upper levels in the downtown code promote that those would be living, some would be living space up there.
Right, and the planning commission at
But
that
maybe
point,
apartments or,
capitalism would take over, and if somebody wanted to build apartments, it would be in their own best interest to provide parking spaces for the people who rented those apartments, and so they would find a way to make it happen on their property, and wouldn't just simply build all 30,000 square feet with all apartments and then let everybody just go park in the street somewhere.
But isn't that what we're seeing Portland do right now? They are not providing parking spaces for all the tenants for these new buildings. It's been my take.
Portland's actually punishing people who build parking now. They've flipped their code around to require maximum parking, not minimum parking. Because they think that if you build it without parking spaces, people will walk. I'm not sure that's true in Vernonia. Yeah, that's what Portland's doing.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor McNair, do you have any pros or cons? Help with a consensus tonight?
I think it pretty well covered it. I'm against kicking the can down the road. I follow Dale's thinking. I probably share his concerns. I would not vote for this.
Councilor Allen, again?
Well, after listening to everybody carefully, I share probably a little bit of everybody's concern. I'm really close to probably voting for this. I do think it could probably use a couple of tweaks. I'm proposing that we put our mask on, get down there to Chambers for a couple hours, and hammer out a deal between the 5 of us. I think we could just tweak it a little bit to where we're all happy with this and get it done, finished. But that's my thought.
Here, here.
Yeah, I'd go for that.
Okay, it sounds like we have a general consensus to continue this in a workshop. Go ahead, Dale.
So I before we go that route, I want to make sure we're clear, talking with Matt. So my biggest hangup would be if we can impose a parking requirement on a new constructed business in our downtown zone. That seems to be the stumbling block.
Well, sure, to clarify, this is a legislative item, and so the city council has very broad ability to apply any standards that you wish. Could that be one of them? Sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's legally available option for us, because if it isn't, then it might be beyond the workshop.
No, that's definitely legal.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds like we have a general consensus to take this further in a workshop. Staff,
Just a note, you want to continue it off calendar then, and then we can put the workshop on any date you want. But then the hearing part of it is closed and we can work on it some more. And then once we find the resolution that makes the city council happy, we'll bring it on back for a hearing and formally adopt it at that time.
sounds good, Matt.
So we need a motion to continue this off calendar.
Perfect.
Okay,
I can't second that, Stephanie, or I would.
anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor McNair. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councillor Webb,
Aye.
Councillor McNair,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councillor Wagner,
Aye.
Councillor Allen,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Cassette agenda for approval, city council meeting minutes for September 28th, 2020. City council meeting minutes for October 19th, 2020. Any discussion or questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Stephanie.
In the city council meeting minutes for September 28th, I had been requested to review the tape and bring back a proposed amendment. I would like to ask if my amendment is satisfactory.
I listened to the tape. I guess you captured the flavor of our conversation, so I'm good with it. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone like to make a motion to accept these two meeting minutes?
This is Councillor Wagner. I move to approve the consent agenda for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councillor Allen,
Aye.
Councillor Wagner,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councillor Webb,
Aye.
Councillor McNair,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, moving on to new business. Staff report, city administrator quarterly check-in. I brought this to the council tonight, put it on the agenda for tonight's meeting. We did discuss in the city administrator review in July, possibly about going to a quarterly review, just as our city administrator does with our chief of police. And there seemed to be some pretty good discussion about it back then in our workshop, or we're in the evaluation process. So I was just bringing it forward because we're at the point of, if the council wishes to move forward with this quarterly process, we are at the point in the time of year where we're due for another meeting in evaluation. And so just asking council if they feel that this is something they want to do. And if they agree that we could maybe agree to set up a workshop, and we could go public hearing and executive session both to cover that. So just throwing it out there for the council tonight.
Excuse me, Mayor, did you say public hearing?
No, I guess it wouldn't be a public hearing, but in executive session, I meant,
Oh,
or
I
council
see.
council workshop.
It's a question of,
I didn't hear you.
I said to clarify, it's a question of either or. Either open session or executive session, depending on what the discussion would fall under.
Correct.
It would also be up to if the city administrator chose to have it in open or closed session.
That's true.
Councilor
I'm
Webb.
for it.
So Stephanie, can you clarify for us? Because we're not really talking an evaluation process here, so why would it go to executive session?
So I actually clarified this with the city attorney last week because I was concerned that discussing projects might not fall under the umbrella of the executive session that allows you to evaluate the city administrator. And his advice or opinion was that if it is discussing projects and the city administrator's performance, if there were successes, failures, deadlines, then it falls under the umbrella. It's anything that could lead to criticism or praise, basically, of an employee, to put it in layman's terms.
Go ahead, Josette.
So what we talked about doing was doing the short format again, 4 times a year, and the last one being in the July or August time, and connected to a merit or no merit increase. But the scoring in the 3 other times would be specific to areas where I'm underperforming, and then we would discuss those projects and what held them up, and so you guys had kind of a 4 times a year knowing where things are at and why they're stalling or why we're going I'm proposing we go a different way, or just in a private meeting where we could have that be more candid instead of being the formal council meeting where everybody's kind of watching what they say or not saying what they want to say. Does that make sense as far as if things are going good or not?
Yeah, I think that's what we had in mind, Josette.
Just to clarify something, so we're right back to an evaluation process going on 4 times a year.
Not really an evaluation so much as like by going through the evaluation format, that easy 1-page or 2-page checklist, it would trigger in your guys' brains, I didn't like this or that, and then this would be the mechanism where we discuss what's up with that project, why, where are we at, kind of more of a Q&A, and then you would just take those 3 that you've done, and that would help you kind of formulate the whole year in the final real evaluation, because you guys never gave up a real evaluation yearly.
Well, I don't think that I don't remember in my recollection that we settled that matter in as much. I would have thought this would have been more of an informative rather than an evaluation. I thought we were trying to get away from that.
I don't think as a council you had consensus on what you were actually sticking with it or totally going away from it.
I'd have to agree with that summary. So that's kind of where I'm getting at, is did we make a decision as it related to that? Because if so, I wasn't in on it.
Counselor Webb.
Yeah, to your point, Councilor McNair, I do not believe we ever made a decision one way or the other if we were going to adopt this new methodology, or it seemed like there was a hesitancy to do that and wanted to kind of do a blend. I'm in the same boat you are, though. I viewed this new option as being more constructive and
More collaborative.
And more collaborative. You know, the city administrator brings back her report to us. We have our priority list, and she gets an update from us that what's still our priority to stay. You know, we hear from her that what's changed, and that might change our minds. So, like you say, it is collaborative, and it'll be a fluid process to try to weave our way through the weeds here and get these things done.
Yeah, I agree, Dale, and I understand the city administration's administers issue in terms of the merit increase. I don't know how we resolve that issue. We certainly have to, but to me, I thought we were trying. The attempt was try to get away from that scoring, if I might.
Well, and Bruce, I don't think you individually each need to score it. I'm just saying we use that as a guide during this quarterly evaluation meeting to go through projects.
Can you
right? So
can you elaborate?
am I hitting the mark in this? Well, like, so the scoring guide comes up with, am I punctual and all that? Are you guys all of a sudden not seeing me at City Hall? Then that would be something we discuss in this meeting, right? And then the next one is, am I taking care of the public perception? Has there been a ton of bad press with City Hall? Then that would be the discussion. Then we go to grant administration, projects. We just go down the subject headings you guys have, and then the evaluation, the formal one that's once a year, and hit those. You know, some of them are going to be really quick, but then when we get to projects or grant administration or those kinds of things, I could see that having more meat in the discussion. And so it was just more to get us face to face in this kind of environment, so that it isn't contentious when we don't agree, or I'm not doing something, or I feel like you guys aren't understanding something. It just is happening more often, and we all get kind of more used to it. That's what I thought we were doing.
And this
Well, can I continue on here just a moment? I realize I'm taking space, but just I would ask that if she could elaborate on how this would be, if it's beneficial to her to have that sort of structure. I kind of getting the feeling that it is. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think it is, because I'd much rather know 90 days into something that a counselor has a huge problem with how I'm approaching something than 12 months later and they're like full of venom about my performance once a year. I'd much rather know and have the face-to-face where it's not so heavily, it's not such a big event. It's more of a quarterly thing where we get used to having the back and forth about projects and getting information from me and you guys giving me information. That seems much more amenable to a good relationship than the holding it all in and talking about it once a year.
I understand that, and I don't have any problem with that. What I guess I was going at was where the problem that I'm hanging up on is the scoring aspect. Do you find that helpful to you?
No, I don't even know that you have to score it. I'm just saying using that format in those headings where I'm being evaluated over the course of the year to lead how we're talking about it. Does anyone have issues with how much I'm at City Hall? Does anyone have issues with the public perception? If those are no, then we move on to the big meat of it, which is what's going on, what projects are on the ticket, all of that. I don't think you even have to score it if you don't want. I'm just saying use it as a guide, because that's what I'm working for, is those elements in that scoring guide. I'm supposed to be hitting those marks, and that's why I say use it to facilitate discussion.
Yeah, yours is more of a procedural issue. I just didn't want to. I wanted to get away from that whole aspect of the 1 through 10. If you get my drift. I'm through now, Mayor.
The grade, the ABC, I got it.
Yeah, I'm well aware that we hadn't decided which way we were going to go with this. That's why I wanted to bring it up for discussion tonight and to see if you want to go any further with it. That was Josette pretty much explained my intent in this process. I think it would ultimately make her job easier, and it'd bridge a gap between city administrator and our council, a possible bridge a gap of better communication. So that was my intent for bringing this tonight. So.
Susan, I interrupted you there.
No, I think Josette pretty much covered what I was going to say is, a couple of things. It's beneficial to us to have a conversation outside of the council meeting, which is specifically addressing council business. And then it does give us an opportunity to have conversations of questioning, if we have a concern or if we're not seeing something, or being positive and saying, by the way, really great job, saw this, I like how you changed this, or whatever it is that we're talking about. But I definitely think the more frequent check-ins, and I thought we had actually kind of agreed on it, even though we didn't exactly come up with the format we were going to use. I know we'd agreed on it and thought it was a good idea to be doing.
Well, I don't want to mislead anyone, Susan. That was not my contention. My contention was that we were somehow going back to the original format of our evaluation and the way we did it This notion of a quarterly deal is right along the avenue of what I brought up to begin with. When I brought this forward back after the last evaluation. So I don't disagree with that. I just didn't like the idea of the scoring issue. So I hope I didn't mislead anybody with that.
No, I appreciate your clarification.
Does the council wish to set a future date or workshop for this meeting in November, sometime this year?
Well, it should be based on the quarter. We're well past the first one, I believe, aren't we?
Yeah.
Would have been October.
So I think we should do it as soon as possible.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion, following the notion that we're having a quarterly meetings. So,
Councilor Webb.
So I'm hearing, sounds like we want to move forward. We're going to have this workshop to develop the structure and probably have the city administrator there also for her input. Is that what I'm getting, or are we going to move right to just go for it? But we probably better do that workshop, make sure we're all on the same page and clear before we go to the executive session.
well, just for clarification, Dale, I don't think that all, just to bring it up, I don't think they all have to be an executive session, but, yeah, I follow where you're going. I think, we're getting the cart ahead of the horse there, but it shouldn't be a problem.
So do you guys want to have a workshop ahead of your next meeting, and I'll just bring the format and you can decide what you want to do? Or do you want to do a workshop in person?
Wonder if
Well,
we
I'm
could-
always,
Sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
no, go ahead, JR, I've been talking.
I was just wondering if we could talk about getting together, talk about this parking. I just wonder if we could, I don't think it'd take us that long to kind of come up with a consensus on how we want to format this. Maybe we could do it the same day. I don't know. Might be too much to add one day. I don't know.
I think on the first one, it probably wouldn't be, JR. It probably would be, we should be able to do both at the same time.
Yeah, it's just more of a formatting how we want to go about it, which shouldn't be, I wouldn't think too long. I think we kind of know anyway.
I think it's going to be an ongoing process where we tweak it as we go, you know, or whoever does. We'll find out tomorrow night, huh? Anyway, that's just my thought.
Staff will just have you guys schedule a work session that will talk about the parking section of Title IX and the quarterly meetings design setup.
Yeah. Councilor Webb.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, I guess one of the big components that I can see where there could be some contention, debate among counselors is we're basically looking at our priority list of different projects, and I'm assuming that's going to be a big part of this is having the discussion with the city administrator. What's our number one? What's our number two? What are we really pushing her to concentrate on? And we all need to be on the same page on that. If we go into those and we could spend an hour debating amongst ourselves what our priority is. So I think if we could have that list at that workshop and kind of hammer that out before we go into that meeting with you formally, we can gain some time and traction there.
I think a lot of this
So when
work
you're
can be
talking
done.
about the,
I think a lot of this work, Dale, can be done outside that meeting, like you're talking about. That we could set up those issues, and then when we came into the meeting, maybe it'll be a little less contentious.
Yeah, that'd be my fear if we don't talk about our priority list and get some consensus there, then we'll spend a lot of her time debating that in her meeting. So try to streamline it.
so are you expecting all the counselors to come to the work session with their priorities in mind? Or are you expecting the action item list, or what are you expecting? I'm not following exactly.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see the list or action item list, so everybody can. They're going to have to pick out their priorities, and we'll have a discussion about what should be priority. Because I know you have a limitation of what you can physically do. You're not going to do everything on the list. We're going to have to prioritize, and you're going to have to give us your input of what's feasible, what you can do, what the time, just your feedback in that meeting of a timeline on some of these things may change what our priority is.
Right.
So, but we still, I mean, things that come to my mind when it's a public safety issues, things like that, that's high on my list. It may not be on Susan's. So we might all have different viewpoints. We probably better get on the same page before the meeting with you, the formal meeting, or we're going to spend all our time going around that debate.
Okay.
Somewhere recently in past meetings, not too long ago, somewhere in the last year, didn't we set a priority list?
I don't remember that, Counselor.
Seems like it's been about a year and 3/4.
Maybe. When you get old, JR, sometimes a couple of years seems like a couple months. So you may be right.
I think we're due to sit down and probably come up with another list that'll probably change anyway, but I think we're due to talk about that again.
I think we should at least bring the original list and see where we are with getting things done on it, and then expand it from there, or reorganize, or leave them the way they are. I think that we need to look at what we'd already done.
Yeah, we had the senior center was on there, some beautification projects were on there, on and on and on, right?
Yeah. So Josette, within the files down there, within the staff, could you disseminate that list? Or I should ask maybe Stephanie on our email, so at least we had something to begin with.
Are you wanting me to send it to you ahead of the work session where you discuss this process, or bring it to the meeting with the action item list and you guys would put together your priority list then?
I would prefer, just as a starting point, I would prefer that it was on our, given to me prior to ahead, so that I could work off of it.
I'll send it to you for you guys to, because we're talking about two different sessions here now. We're talking about a priority work session where you guys put together your priority list. We're also talking about a probably executive session where you talk to the city administrator about performance. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, their first work session's gonna be in tandem with parking and be about priorities. And a little bit about the setup of the executive quarterly session.
I'm just trying to look for a way to facilitate it a little bit so that we don't come into that meeting, we don't accomplish what we want to do, because we're going to try and pack that into the parking too at the same time. Anyone else has other ideas, I'm willing to hear them.
No, I think it's a good idea to have some kind of preparation for that workshop. We just need to decide when we want to have the workshop. And then we could go from there.
Is Matt still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, because he'll need to say what dates he's available or not available for you guys to meet also.
What do you got in mind?
Tomorrow.
Oh, geez.
No.
No, nobody's driving anywhere tomorrow. We don't know what kind of bedlam to expect. Everyone stay home. Barricade the door. Especially for those of us who don't live in Vernonia. I'm out here in the danger zone.
I'm going to drive around Portland.
You're safe out here, Matt.
Yeah, I know. I know I would be.
I don't
We're
think we're
going
going
to do it this week or next week.
Next
I don't
week?
think we're going to know anything for a couple of days.
All right. I think you're right.
So are you guys available on the 9th?
I am.
Can't Matt just call in to be available on conference call for
I
advice?
can't be, but I don't mind coming out to see you guys. I'm available on the 9th in the afternoon.
Some people have a job, Matt.
That's why I said the afternoon.
I'd be available on the 9th, Stephanie.
I am not available that week at all.
Okay.
Why don't we start with Susan? When are you available?
When are you available, Susan?
Hang on, I'm looking at my calendar. So the following week is fairly open, and then the week after that is Thanksgiving. So
Can you phone in?
the next week, no.
What are you going to South Pacific Island?
No, grand jury.
Oh,
And
How about
Wednesday
the
holiday,
23rd?
so
Is there a parks meeting on the 18th? Wednesday?
No, they're on the 25th, I believe. Or not really, probably, because it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
How about the 18th of November, Wednesday?
I think that works.
I'm available.
Dale's available. JR?
You sure?
Okay.
What time
What
were you
time?
thinking? I have a hearing that evening in Dundee.
Oh, Lord.
Well,
6:30 or 7?
7.
That won't work for him then.
So, are you guys against the 23rd? It's a Monday.
I'm out that day, but I can just present stuff. I don't have to be there.
Oh.
Well,
I can
now,
make
how's that going? And how's that going to work, Josette, setting up the formatting for the evaluation or the quarterly meetings?
Well, I thought you were doing your priorities.
You need to be there for that.
Okay.
So the 9th doesn't work. What's the 8th do?
That's a Sunday.
That's a Sunday.
Okay, what about the Tuesday of that month, of that week?
What about the 10th? The 10th.
She said she's out that whole week.
Oh, Susan's out that whole week, yeah.
Susan, do you have
What
grand
about
jury
the
on
17th?
Saturday? I'm
17.
willing to do it Saturday.
I can do it Saturday.
I don't think they have
Can
grand
the
jury
city
on
planner do
Saturday.
a Saturday?
I can make a Saturday work, sure.
Why the heck not?
We
There
just do
you
it
go.
this Saturday. Get it over with, please. I think we can hammer this out.
That's this Saturday? The 7th?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
We can do it earlier in the day, right?
Show up.
10 o'clock.
Josette, you're not liking this, I can see.
I
What
think
time are we
Saturdays kind of suck for staff.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll do what you guys want, but I'm guessing that's what her look is too, because that's our only days.
How about the 17th of November, Tuesday? Matt, can you do it on the 17th?
I've got a hearing in the evening on the
A
17th.
hearing.
I don't on Monday the 16th.
We have
I
council.
think we have a council meeting then.
And you have a
Okay.
hearing at that meeting, Matt.
We could meet early if it's okay with staff not having dinner between work and the meeting.
The JR has problems with that. He didn't get into the valley till 6
Yeah.
o'clock.
How about Thursday, the 19th?
I'm out that day.
Ah, Christ.
We're supposed to have planning.
Well, the way I heard Saturday
How
was
about-
it was staff didn't want to do Saturday, but council was willing to do Saturday. Do we really need staff there to hammer out just the parking section?
Yes.
Why?
Process and legalities and entry to the building. Oh, if you guys want to meet and that's the only day that works for you guys, I'll be there.
I think that's unfair to staff. I didn't think of that when I said Saturday was fine.
I'm also going to guess that our contract employee won't charge his standard rate for a weekend.
Hadn't thought about that. I'll just take a Friday off and work on Saturday. It doesn't matter to me much.
Okay.
Did we rule out the 23rd on Monday? We did.
We could do it for parking, but Josette won't be able to be there, so we couldn't do the priorities or process for her quarterly check-in. Do you want me to just send an email to everybody asking for dates?
I want to try something one last time, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
Have we ruled out this week?
No.
I haven't heard any dates for this week.
I've got a hearing on Wednesday night, but I can make Thursday night work. I can make Friday night work.
Does Thursday allow us enough time for notice?
I can
Monday
make
today.
Thursday. I can make Thursday the 5th.
Sure.
Do you recall, we weren't having a meeting this Thursday, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's great. We got definite availability for us.
What times?
What time on the 5th?
Yeah. 7 o'clock.
What's the earliest Susan can make it there?
Noon?
On Thursday?
She doesn't work at the office anymore, JR.
Oh, no, I am working at the office 5 days a week.
Oh,
I
Oh,
am in St. Helens every day. But, you know, I would prefer not to get in that early. I mean, I can do 5.
how early can you, JR?
I'm leaving it up to Susan Wagner. I'll take time off for it. I find it that important.
Okay,
As I am taking time off as well.
Okay, 4 o'clock. How's that?
sounds fine to me. Can we do that with you? Wait a minute, hold on. City Hall doesn't close till 5.
Right.
So are you going to be able to get away from City Hall for an hour?
Yeah, we're just gonna go into the council chamber, right?
Yep, but you're going to be ours.
Yeah, we can just,
That's no different than the time they're spending now, except for the fact that it's at night, not during the day, so they're not offsetting their hours.
It matters little to me, Susan. I'm just asking. 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Is that settled?
Done.
We've done the impossible. Thursday at 4.
Jeez Louise.
Okay. Waiver of remonstrance. Request, Titus. Page 30, 31. You need a motion on each one of these remonstrance? Probably, yeah.
yeah. So you just confirm it, they meet the criteria.
Okay. Any discussion on the first request waiver from Titus, Dan Titus? Dale Webb.
So are you saying they all meet the requirements, Josette? Or are we gonna talk
They
individually?
do, they don't. They do.
Okay, so all of them will meet the requirement. Thank you.
Josette, I had a question for you, if I can, Mayor.
Go ahead, Counselor Allen.
That 8th Street, is that the section coming off of State Street, or is that 8th Street around coming back in Louisiana? And is that the new street that was punched in? I'm a little
So
confused
it's
when I.
8th Street off Louisiana.
That's that new little short street with the little turnaround at the end, right? It's all gravel.
No.
No, it doesn't have a street yet.
Okay, there's nothing there then as of now.
Right now, it's an overgrown gravel road that hasn't been used as a road for 20 years-ish.
Okay. So that must be what, I Street down there where the new houses were just put in?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And is Andy Purdue is on the phone?
He is.
Is he a builder?
Let me unmute him. 1 second. There you go. He should be able to talk now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Andy. Andy, this is Counselor Allen. My question was, I seen your name on 3 of them here. Are you a builder?
I am, yes.
Okay. How many houses have you currently built in Vernonia up in that area?
Well, I built 4 off of, I built the I Street up there, and then I built 4 houses on I Street, and then I built 1 on Mellinger Road.
Oh, is that the one that's just framed up right now?
No, that's Terry Goodrich house. I just passed that one, maybe 3 houses on the right as you're going down Mellinger.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to know who you were and say hi. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
Oh,
Go ahead, Counselor Allen. Counselor Webb.
Keep confusing me with JR tonight.
I know. I'm
It must
tired.
be my hairdo.
Yeah.
I would move to approve the waiver of remonstrance for Daniel Titus for Oregon Street, lot 200. We got to do these individually.
Oh, we
Okay.
don't. Oh, we can do them all together. Sure.
Okay. Then I'd also move that we approve the waiver of remonstrance for 129 East H Street, 171 East H Street, and I'm missing one here. What am I missing?
118 East G.
118 East G Street.
Thank you, Counselor Webb. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Allen. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor McNair?
Nay.
Counselor Wagner?
Aye.
Counselor Allen?
I'm going to vote aye, but I think this is an issue we need to address as council very soon.
Counselor Webb?
Aye.
Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Business from the departments. Angie, there you are.
Hello, everyone. So the first thing I have is the quarterly report. Pretty self-explanatory. All those funds so far are coming in under budget as far as expenses. Parks especially has been bringing in lots of extra revenue that we weren't anticipating. So I guess we can thank COVID for something. Do you guys have any questions on that, on the report?
Can you elaborate on that extra money coming in on parks?
I didn't hear what he said. Oh, it's just have a lot more revenue coming in, Lake particularly, and Airport Park has seen a big jump in camping fees.
Oh, good. So
Yeah.
it wasn't related to long-term camping down at or long-term stays down at
No,
Anderson.
no, those are pretty level with last year, the revenue altogether down there. The lake has already collected more this fiscal year than we budgeted for the entire year. So I don't know if that's a combination of COVID, the new park host who really enjoys collecting fees, and then now we have the credit card, it accepts credit cards, so it's a lot of revenue from that. Rick's muted.
You're
Councilor
muted,
Webb.
Rick. So on the credit card at the lake, so is that being tracked separately?
Yeah, we're not collecting the cash like we were, so it's not in addition to. It's just, I think we're probably going to see more revenue because of it, because it's easier. But yeah, we're not loads of cash like we were before.
Okay, yeah, I just was wondering. I knew it would be an offset, but I know a lot of people were put off. And he didn't have that $5 bill, and that's all it would take, or the $1. So sometimes
Right.
people walked away. So that should help us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll have a better idea as we get through the rest of the year, because we've only had it in place for a couple months. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? I don't know. Moving on.
Airport.
Yeah.
Looks like we're falling a little short on revenue there. For that.
Sometimes, well, it's mostly Mike Seeger. Sometimes he'll pay his whole year all at once, and then other times he chunks it out. So that it just depends. I mean, we get all the rent for all the hangars. It just, they're not consistent. So that's all that. That's what the line item is.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Angie, you're going to go through all the items here that are over that we need to do this supplemental for. I had it marked out on another paper, but I left it at work, so I apologize for that. But it seemed like a lot of these were revenue up, payroll up, expenses up on several categories.
Yeah, I'm going to go through it all.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay,
We move on to the supplemental.
sure.
First is resolution 2020-14. It is on page 3, or sorry, page 1 of the packet itself.
Okay, well,
Sorry, I'm getting, hold on. Sorry, Matt, can you, I can't get to my email, but I see that you emailed me about the resolution. Are we not?
I was just saying that I was sticking around for the adoption of the resolution, but I was just trying to text you privately to say I'm not trying to wait. I was going to go.
Do you guys want to just wait till after you guys discuss parking?
No, I meant the resolution for the first item.
Okay, sorry, you confused me.
Right.
So we are good to go on the resolution 2020-14, initiating the withdrawal of territory. Okay.
so we were gonna hold something out on those Martinez properties? No, we were gonna go forward with it then? Can't hear you, Josette.
Just the initiation of the withdrawal, there's still another public hearing.
Oh,
Or two, sorry.
2 more public hearings.
Mayor,
Yes, Counselor McNair.
point of privilege. Did we go past the supplemental budget, or are we just putting that off so that we can vote on this other issue?
This was on the agenda before the supplemental.
Okay, all right. We're going to get to this, though, afterwards, right?
Correct.
Okay, I withdraw my.
So would anyone like to make a motion for resolution 2020-14? Go ahead, Counselor Webb.
I'd move that we adopt resolution number 2020-14, a resolution initiating withdrawal of territory from the city of Vernonia.
I'll second that.
Second's been made. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Webb,
Aye.
Counselor McNair,
Aye.
Counselor Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, we'll move on to the supplemental budget. Angie?
Okay. So I included this more of a detail, as you can see, of each fund. But last time, I think you guys, I'm confused because the way I formatted it, it just wasn't clear. So I'm going to go down and address each cited item and then explain why. So in the general fund, we start with Rose Avenue building. Once we finish construction, we determined that the city-owned building, that we would hold the utility accounts for that, for the electricity and gas. So there's a corresponding expense line item that we will pay the bills, then I will invoice the seniors in the food bank for their portion, and they will reimburse us, so to speak. So these line items are going to be added just to keep track of that more easily. The miscellaneous income, typically we never budget for that, but I'd like to start budgeting whatever our outstanding balance is of the revolving fund loan that through CAT that we have for the houses. I don't know how that started, but we've been seeing a lot more of those come through as people are refinancing. or 7. So I want to create that to track because the auditors are going to flag those expenditures, and we're going to get a finding if it's not in the budget. So right now, this is what I have that I know that is coming up that's either been paid or has been requested to be paid out is the 9,700. So it's corresponding in the as well. The next section is gas distribution. You have a question?
Yeah. So is the 9,700 reflected in the budget somewhere else, or is this newfound money?
No, it's expensed out in the corresponding miscellaneous expense. Which we will get.
Thank you.
Gas distribution is something new. We got it last year. I didn't know what it was or why we got it. I checked into it. It was natural gas drilling or something that's going on in the county. So kind of unclear exactly how long we're going to be getting it or if it's going to go up, but we got it again already this year. So I wanted to add that in. I'll find out about it before budget comes around. The next page is the SRO reimbursement. Keith and I talked with Aaron Miller, and we agreed to reduce that by half since the school's closed. Abby's not going up there to work. So we're going to reduce what we charge them. Regardless of what happens going forward, I'm planning on billing them for that second portion. Just because that's still, with the whole thing, the SRO was why we hired another officer. So hopefully there won't be any issues with that.
Angie, I couldn't hear that real well. Is that because they said that our officer's not in school?
Yeah, because there's no school in session, so we're using her to.
Right.
Go ahead.
I got you.
Yeah.
I get it now. We've got her full time because they don't want her, right?
Yeah, they don't need her for anything. There's no kids to worry about.
Unless they go back here in February or whatever.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, you're breaking up real bad. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
And moving on to expenses for insurance benefits. When I wrote the budget, we assumed that all the new officers that were being hired were going to be collecting for full family benefits. Turns out one has waived benefits completely, and the other one is only employee, so it's able to deduct that expense by $40,000. So that's a reduction there. Building O&M, I had to increase. This one is we bought camera systems, replaced the cameras at City Hall, so they have better resolution, just all around better quality. We also placed them at Cabin. Pay attention to what's going on down at Hawkins Park. We've had a lot of vandalism down there. And we put some at the senior center building. So that the cost of the cameras wasn't very much, but we had to hire an electrician, and he had a crew that came out to wire everything and get all those installed. And we've also put them out at the wastewater treatment plant, but the cost was absorbed in their budget. Miscellaneous is just the offset for the miscellaneous income. VCLC expense, I'm increasing the new awnings that we ordered. And the Rose Avenue is just offset of that income. And then the contingency actually increases because it worked out that way. So even though I had to increase a couple of items in it, we had enough savings and revenue that it ended up getting. So that's the general fund. For parks, I increased the operational to pay for the new signs that we've ordered, and we're replacing all of the large signs, you know, the name signs for all the parks. And then we're going to redo the rule signs and just clean everything up. And I think you guys went over that. Oh no, that was the park meeting. Anyway, so that's what that's for. And then it just reduced the contingency by that same amount, $10,000.
Angie, how many
water
signs are we getting for $10,000?
The signs are actually not quite that much. We're getting 7. The total cost is $5,977. They're going to be for, there's 7 of them. And then we're also going to replace all the rule signs with nice metal signs that are all uniform. We're going to add some parking signs down at Spencer Park and different places. We're going to put the proper signage so that we can actually enforce, number 1, enforce the rules, and number 2, make sure that we can enforce fee collection at all the places we want to. Yeah, that's what like sideways. This is a mock-up of all of them. There we go. Oh.
Thank you, even though I can only hear about 3/4 of that. I appreciate you giving me a little more information.
So moving on to the water fund, we were able to reduce the salaries and insurance. We had an employee that left, and then we had a new employee that was budgeted to take benefits but didn't. And then I had to add some money in for an unemployment claim that's come in. And then the savings that we had in the salaries, we dumped down into contract services. Jeff wants to start, he wants to have money available to contract out for digging water lines and service things. Just we have so much construction going on that he wants to have that ability to use an outside source if need be. And then there was an increase in the contingency to offset the savings in payroll.
Angie, can you talk about the unemployment line for me real quick?
Unemployment?
Yeah, did we lay somebody off? Is that what you're saying?
No, that was from the employee that was let go last year.
Oh.
So with that question,
I'm sorry?
We've come across this issue before in the past. Do you follow the standards that the unemployment department does in terms of qualifications of that individual receiving their unemployment, since we're not going through the unemployment insurance fund? Do you have
They don't come to me for the unemployment. They still file with the state.
And you just pay?
I pay
so
the state.
They have to work, have to look for work, and they have to do all the follow all the conditions there.
It's exactly the same process. It's just that we don't pay the insurance up front. We just get a bill if they file, because in our case it's to our benefit, because rarely do we have unemployment claims.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Right.
So are you just paying out the benefits that they qualify for? You don't have to pay any penalties or anything like that because you're not involved in the insurance fund?
No, we're not obligated to be. I think it's municipal. Average private sector people can do it, but yeah, it's totally legit.
Okay, I'll talk to you at another time about it. I'm having the same issues that JR is. I'm only getting about half what you're saying.
From what I gathered, Angie, if I heard this right, the city pays dollar for dollar split instead of a payroll percentage for unemployment insurance.
Correct.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so the sewer fund, the same line items are being changed for the same exact reasons. So salary decreases and contingency increases. In the streets fund, the 59,000 as miscellaneous income is the payments that we're receiving from the settlement for the Nixon issue. So I have to reflect that income, and then I've just added it to the contract services line below because it's all going to go towards fixing the storm drains. Memorial Cemetery, this one was, we didn't finish the project last year, budgeted for the college. So this just, we had to pull some of it forward this year to finish it out. So it's done now, but we had to put it in the budget. Water facility is a housekeeping issue. In the approved budget, you guys, or the budget committee, wanted to increase the transfer in and add the 20 for the professional services, and I just totally overlooked it. And when I sent it through for adoption, I just copied over what was proposed. So this is just a housekeeping thing here. This isn't something new. And the CDBG is wrap up the project. Thought we were going to be done with everything at the end of the fiscal year, and it just didn't happen. Everything taking a long time for all the final stuff to get wrapped up with the grant. So this will take care of that, and that's the end.
Thank you, Angie, for all
Thank
your
you.
work.
And any of you are welcome to be on the call if you need clarification. That's garbly answers.
Any other questions or discussions about the supplemental budget?
Well, it was kind of hard to hear. So.
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit, but maybe we need a new laptop.
I'm just using my phone. I don't have a speaker on the laptop.
Oh, okay. Any other discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt this resolution?
Well, wait a minute, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor McNair.
Going back to the camera issue that we installed cameras in the different locations. We installed cameras down at the sewer plant. We charged that to the sewer fund. Am I correct in that assessment? Still in your hands? Okay.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory of where the other cameras were put at.
We put a couple on the scout cabin to point at the gazebo at Hawkins Park. We've had a lot of vandalism down there.
Yeah, I just needed to know where they were at. It's in terms of billing towards certain funds.
Yeah.
Part of the gazebo. Where do the funds from the gazebo go to? Do they go into the general fund for the rental?
No, they
of
go
it?
to the park.
So why would we not be charging the parks for that?
Well, we are. That was that portion. There was only 2 cameras that went down there, so that's just a couple $100.
Well, it isn't reflect. I guess I misunderstood you. I thought it was all in the general fund that you were charging.
I wrote all the locations, but the general fund is paying for Rose Avenue building or the senior center building, and the city hall.
Okay, all right. My misunderstanding. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. That's all I wanted to say, Mayor, so you can continue.
Okay, thank you. Anyone like to make a motion, or JR, did you have another just comment or question?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
With that, Mayor, I'll make the motion.
I'll second that. This is Counselor Wagner.
Well, I hadn't made the motion.
Oh. I presumed it was an
Make the
all-inclusive motion. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution number 2020-15, the resolution adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Councilor McNair. Is there a second?
This is Counselor Wagner. I will second Counselor McNair's motion.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Stephanie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilor McNair,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Wagner,
Aye.
Councilor Allen,
Aye.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Ordinance 925, granting a franchise agreement. Can be found on pages 57 through 67.
Okay, so you guys had asked that this come back to you with all of the verbiage in it that was tweaked at the last time. So that's all been encompassed in here. And you'll see that on section 11, the 7% is the franchisee fee that you guys discussed so that we can stay competitively neutral. I did talk to them about the lines, and I did put that, I believe, in my city administrator's report. His answer was, when we talked about them sparsing out the lines, was, to be clear, we will competitively bid for the best fiber connection at the Internet Exchange in Portland. They'll be connecting to Ziply's fiber at the edge of town, and then they'll be running lines to each property. And it is not a bandwidth problem that Ziply has coming to town. It's specific to that they're using the old copper telephone wire, and Blue Mountain feels like their service will be better. So they're not going to be spreading the bandwidth thinner. It's just how Ziply gets it to each customer is limited because it's in that telephone.
Will they be using fiber optic on the lines coming into each individual?
No, so theirs is like the cable type line, but it's not copper telephone line. So I don't know the ins and outs of the different cables, but it's not going to be fiber. They'll be using fiber. They'll be distributing with a cable type.
Okay.
So do you guys have any other questions about the Blue Mountain franchise agreement?
I would just like to comment that my professional opinion over here says that it will be much better than the Ziply service, likely because it is the coax, not, well, or whatever kind of cable it is, as opposed to the telephone line.
So if there's no other discussion, we just staff would ask you to adopt ordinance 925.
Joe, I got a question. Joseph, do you know if they're gonna make everybody do a re-hookup fee to pull new cable to their house and start all over with all that reconnection fees?
They did not kind of lay out how that works for the per customer. But I would think they probably wouldn't, only because then they wouldn't be their cost would not be effective to challenge Ziply if it's going to cost people a lot of out of pocket up front.
Yeah, right. Did you say Ziply is gonna provide the line, the main line to Blue Mountain?
So they went and bid it at the Portland Internet Exchange, and they connected and got the bid for Ziply's fiber at the edge of town. So that's what they bid to connect to.
I'd only heard of Ziply last time we talked about them, and then today at work. And it was just by coincidence somebody was griping about Ziply, and I said Ziply. So I paid attention. Well, Ziply took over Comcast and Aloha, and everybody's TV bills went cable or satellite doubled. And they were like, well, how come that works? Well, because Ziply bought out Comcast in there, and it was like $200 and some for their TV bill. So the guy at work was pretty upset about it.
Well, Ziply bought out Frontier,
right?
Which has been
also.
Verizon. I should say they picked them up.
Frontier's gone, right? It's just Ziply.
Yeah,
Ziply
that's the new.
I think this internet's like oil pipelines. They trade hands all the time or something.
Right, and I think those fiber optics are probably a transmission fee that goes on there.
Right, all up for bid.
Yeah. There's a lot goes over those fiber optic cables that have nothing to do with telephone and different exchanges.
Okay, thank you, Josette.
So Josette, I have a question to ask you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
What happened to the red lines? When you make changes,
you guys asked to see it all incorporated.
Oh, okay. I just always liked the red line when what you showed us, the changes.
Yeah, that's the one I sent last time, but you wanted to get your questions answered and see it all put together in a formal ordinance with it out of the red line.
Hmm?
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you. I don't know if I quite understood it.
Okay.
But,
well, I sent the red line at your last meeting.
you probably did, and I just don't remember it.
Okay, any other questions? Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 925?
This is Counselor Wagner. I would like to move to approve ordinance number 925, an ordinance of the City of Vernonia granting to Blue Mountain Networks LLC, a Delaware limited liability company, a franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network within the City of Vernonia, Oregon.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Is there a second?
Councilor Webb will second.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Would anyone like to hear this ordinance read in full?
No.
Okay. I'm going to do your guys' votes and then I'll read it by title only. Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Counselor Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Hobart.
Aye.
Counselor McNair.
Aye.
Counselor Wagner.
Aye.
Motion carried. This is the first reading of ordinance number 925 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Vernonia granting to Blue Mountain Networks LLC, a Delaware limited liability company, a franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network within the City of Vernonia, Oregon. And if you want, you guys can do the second as well.
I would move that we go forward with the second reading.
Is there a second?
Counselor Webb will second.
Second's been made. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Counselor McNair.
Aye.
Counselor Allen.
Aye.
Counselor Wagner.
Aye.
Mayor Hobart.
Aye.
Motion carried. Would any counselor like to hear this ordinance read in full?
No.
Hearing none, this is the first reading by title only of ordinance number 925, an ordinance of the City of Vernonia granting to Blue Mountain Networks LLC, a Delaware limited liability company, a franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network within the City of Vernonia, Oregon. This ordinance has been adopted and will be in effect in 30 days.
Stephanie, did you just say that was the first reading? I probably
Yeah.
didn't hear that.
Yeah. Yes, she did.
Sorry, that was the second reading.
Second.
Thank you.
I'm confused.
I think we're done now, aren't we, Stephanie?
Correct.
Right. Okay, there's no correspondence. None. City Administrator report. Page 68.
Okay, so I sent you guys the city administrator report. I don't know, are you guys, since you're getting these in the packet, are you wanting me to go through them, or do you just want to ask me questions? Because I don't want to read you something you've already read.
I've read mine.
I've read mine.
Me
Does
too.
anyone, do you guys just want to ask me questions? If there's any
I
questions?
do. I do.
Go ahead, Counselor McNair.
So have you gotten any response on the POs? Any timber
No, I
prices?
was not, I was not in the office today. I had to take family to medical appointments, so
Uh-huh.
no.
So nobody sent you back any emails?
Not yet.
Okay, well, hopefully they will here quite soon.
Yeah, when we were at the parks meeting, Skip was saying that the market, he was concurring with what you were saying about the market, so hopefully, yeah.
Well, it is and it isn't, because they're currently flooding it with that burn timber down south. So hopefully the issue is the quality of logs they're getting,
Yeah.
whether or not the mills can take that, whereas we're not sending something like that. So we'll see.
Any other questions for the city administrator or discussions? Thank you, Josette. Any items from counselors? Counselor Webb.
I think Chief Connor, oh, is he not on here?
He's not on anymore.
Yeah, he's gone.
He didn't have a report.
I was having all kinds of action out here in front of the house tonight. There, it looks like we were having the police department driving course, and then I see the fire department. And there's been all kinds of activity over here. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. I don't know who was driving the patrol car, but they were doing pretty good maneuvers out there. Have an obstacle course set up and weaving and backing up and turning. They didn't wreck, so I guess it was all good. Yeah, I'll be shutting down the lake pump tomorrow, and everything ran really well this year. I ran a little later but I was gone for hunting for about 2 weeks, so I usually turn it off when I'm gone. I don't like leaving it too unattended. So we're looking in good shape. We got a lot of rain coming in starting tonight, so lake's in good shape.
Thank you, Dale. Anybody else?
I got one thing, Mayor.
Okay, Counselor Allen.
I drove up Louisiana tonight, took a look around those new construction areas and the streets and the lack of sidewalks, curbs, and streets. And I just encourage all of our my fellow council members to go do that. Look at the people stumbling around on the gravel and the kids and their bikes, and think about, I think we really need to address this issue as far as at what point 50% out, 60% out do we say it's time to put the streets and curbs and sidewalks in. I know we've talked about it, but when you really go see it, there's so much going on out there. You start thinking we're doing something. Maybe we're missing something real quick here. That place is exploding up there. That was my only comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
I share your concerns there, Councilman. I've been up there and looked at it.
It looked like there was some more places going up the old trailer park, and I'd only been up there probably a couple of months ago, but it's changed a lot even in that time. So I think we're all on the same page of doing something different. But
yeah, hence my nay vote.
Exactly. I kind of got your point there.
Counselor Webb.
So to that point, part of that equation is punching Louisiana on through, and I see you guys made a decision a couple of meetings ago to start the preliminary review of what that's going to look like for the city. And I'm sure we haven't got very far yet with that. I mean, that'd be pretty quick, but is that something where we just stick our city engineer on? I mean, the one we contract with, or Josette?
Well, we talked about having, starting with him and looking where is it outside of the, lines of where it should be, because the current configuration of it kind of goes outside of the right of way. So we talked about potentially doing a survey to get the corners marked, and then have the engineer do a preliminary design estimate of what it would cost to design out that and do grading and all of that stuff for us. And then we were hoping at some point that Public Works Committee would be back on and be able to chew on it. The potentials and whether or not it's something we put money into right now or wait for a little more build out. But I think a bigger question in relation to what JR is saying is the idea of the sidewalk section of Title IX. And it really does not touch on builders such as Mr. Perdue with building more than one. He's not building his own single family home. He's building multiple homes and kicking that requirement down the road to the next person. And whether or not we want to continue that MO with planning, because it could potentially have a negative effect. And then what would ultimately be left is that the council would have to use their authority to say, okay, H Street, this year you're all putting in sidewalks. And that's going to be kind of a hard thing to do because no one's going to like it.
Well, it's a form of getting around that. When someone does a subdivision, they're required to do all these things, but you're doing it piecemeal, and in the end, it's just a matter of we end up kicking the can down the road, which what we seem to be good at. And I'm not speaking just to this. I'm just talking about the council. City council in general is that way. Somewhere along the line, you got to get ahead of the curve.
Well, and the issue is that none of our code really addresses the platted, non-improved areas, because Mr. Perdue is not doing any subdividing of parcels.
Right.
So he does not fall under that. And the code doesn't speak to anyone taking platted lots in unimproved areas, old platted lots, and doing them multiples. There's nothing in the code that makes a requirement for streets like it would in a subdivision, like any of it. It doesn't even speak to it.
Well, that whole area is platted up there. It was platted back in the 20s.
Right. So in like a commercial area, if you put in a commercial property, you're required to do a half street improvement, which would mean curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and half of the street of pavement. But in these and in the subdivision, you'd be putting in a paved road. But in these unimproved platted lots, there's nothing that requires them anything more than a single family homes requirement.
And we're going to be
dealing, something to think about.
We're going to be dealing with this issue pretty quickly in right now with that further development there.
We missed what you said there, Rick. In the what?
I think we're going to be dealing with the same issue in the Nickerson Loop with the building of new homes and sidewalks, and not all those sidewalks are in place, I don't think.
Well, they're all in place. I think they're broken, and so they'll have to put in a replacement sidewalk. But if those were all lots in Nickerson and it had no road, that's the real thing the developers are getting around, is they're not putting any asphalt.
Yeah.
That was a subdivision too.
It was. I'm just saying if you imagine it's a platted right of way like H and I and G all are, those are platted right of ways that they're just going to put in the minimal gravel base requirement and get away with not doing sidewalks, curb and gutters, or asphalt. And it's that section of town is now the low-hanging fruit for developers, because it's really the easiest way to get in there and build something and get your money turned back around, and you're not really putting any of the infrastructure that we would require in a subdivision when you're doing multiple homes.
Well, and our requirements seem to be dated back to the 1920s. You know, when people didn't have sidewalks, they even had wooden sidewalks, and gravel roads were acceptable. That's not quite the same today.
Right.
I need to update that.
Joe said it seemed like the planning commission was kind of chewing on a lot of these issues right as we speak.
Yeah, they have to kind of first chew on it and then send it to you guys for approval. So yeah, they're working.
I don't know.
While we're on that,
Bruce,
go
you're
ahead, JR.
I say,
Oh,
I don't know if they had all the information they might quite need, Joe said, as far as who pays for the street engineering, the water engineering, the elevations. They were kind of talking about homeowners putting in a sidewalk as they go and a curb section as they go. And, you know, without all that engineering done ahead of time, that doesn't work piecemeal in it like that. You'll end up with a bunch of ugly and a bunch of wrong without somebody in the city checking it, you know, for elevations and there's a lot that goes into the pre-planning. And my question was, who's going to pay for all that?
So I mentioned that at the meeting, that they do have to go through a permitting process for city engineering to review those permits.
Right, that's one house at a time. I'm talking the whole master plan for the entire street, the stormwater system, everything. You go up there and look what they're doing now. They've got stormwater gutters, open trenches. All that would have to be covered up, changed to put a sidewalk in. So,
I think, are you talking about like a master plan?
no, I'm just talking about all the engineering done on, say you're going to add a couple new streets or Louisiana all the way through. Where's your catch basins going to be? Where's your crosswalks? Where's your ADA? Where's all that stuff? All the elevations of where you want your street before you put sidewalks and driveways. And, you know, if you do sidewalks and driveways and stuff and then try to come in and try to do a street, and you know, you're kind of going backwards. The curb should be in first and measure off the curb to put your planter strip and your elevation to your sidewalks. It's just, there's a lot that goes into it beforehand. And, you know, I don't know where the money's going to come from. That was my question. And I think that's a question for all of us.
Yeah.
well, I think
Well,
you
and I
do
think
what
that's why we originally started talking about putting Louisiana, punching that through, getting that engineering on the city's dime. Because then all of those side streets would then be engineered to match up with what the city has planned, right? Or the city puts in.
Well, when you do that type of engineering that JR is talking about, and I agree with him totally, you don't want it to be piecemeal. You want it to have a standard that everybody has to meet. Can you tie that into the building permit, the cost?
Well, we already have a street and sidewalk standard. That's not what I'm saying.
I used the
Title
wrong
IX
term.
and the Public Works standards are all outfitted exactly like that, like JR is saying. I think what JR is saying, though, is that with it all being undone, there's no mark to hit. There's no, okay, this is the grade. So when someone goes to put in one of those little side streets, Louisiana's not even finished. So they don't have a mark to hit or a stormwater catch basin that the cities to lead all their stuff to. I mean, all we have is sewer and water up there, which they already hook into. But for a bigger plan, the city really needs to plan out Louisiana, and then holding them to meet up with it and do all the engineering will be a lot easier.
What I meant by that was is that if you have an engineering plan for that particular area that says that it's going to all come together finally in one piece, and if we funded the engineering, can we pay for the cost of that through the building permit?
Not exactly, because the city can't be its own reimbursement district, which is if we get Louisiana
Then
dialed in,
SDCs could do it.
then,
Then SDCs
then
could do
the
it.
builder, well, what I'm saying is then the builder could put in the entire road and apply for a reimbursement district. And then every lot off of his little side road that meets our standard, that has the grade and everything there just like it should be, would pay him back. But our first have to is Louisiana, because we know it's an arterial. We know all these little side streets are going to feed into it. So that's something the city rightfully should pay for. But if these guys are going to make money off 8 lots on the side of G Street, we shouldn't be paying for their engineering. That should be a requirement for them to meet up with Louisiana and pay for it. And the way they could reimburse is setting up a district and getting their money back when people build off of it.
So how do you force them to do that?
Changing the code that would require in these unimproved, non-developed areas that they have to do something similar to a subdivision if they do multiples. And not just letting, not harming the person that's doing their own home, but making the person doing 4 or 5 or 8 homes required to do what's just to everybody and putting in that part. But the code doesn't call for that now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there that I could foresee, but something has to be, it would seem to be, there has to be some movement in that direction.
Right. That's what I'm hoping. If we can get Louisiana to start chewing on that, then when the next person comes in and says, "Oh, I'm going to build 8 houses off of G," well, then you're putting in G.
Yeah. So Dale, what we directed was staff to work on the alignment of that first part of that realignment of that first part of Louisiana, so that we could direct traffic within the city rather than going out Mellinger because of the issue with the dust abatement out Mellinger. The county wasn't going to do anything there in terms of helping those folks out. They were pretty much left to their own devices.
Yeah, I understood that, Bruce, and it just makes sense for that to be punched through. Emergency services probably needs another route up into that country anyhow. It's just inevitable.
Yeah,
we're gonna get some blowback on the south end of it. So when they open it up, they aren't gonna like it. But it's a city street, and that's the other part of that equation in there is that was already a city street that was established in there, went back to that trailer park, probably beyond.
Right.
And that's another thing that's kind of fouled this. It isn't like it was just plotted but never built, because I'm sure we'd be holding them a little different standard if somebody was coming in. Well, like we are onto the side streets, we're making them build those to a standard. Yeah, I think the city is going to have to bite off building Louisiana out. And it's going to be a process, and there's no way, we don't want to go in there, put in a fancy street and pave it, and then they turn into it to get to the utilities. That's the other catch-22 of this, is there's going to be a lot of development. We're going to have to be smart about what we finish. Otherwise we're going to be tearing it all up again. So we don't have that kind of money.
No. Well, it was basically just to get the ball rolling on that, get it started. Anyway.
Yeah, I think Public Works actually brought that recommendation a couple of years ago to look at that, doing just exactly what you're doing, to take that first hard look and see what we're facing cost-wise.
Yeah, that's what I was operating off of, Dale's, when I was laid on Public Works there. I remembered that conversation that we were having.
Okay, any
So-
other? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I do, Mayor, I do have one question. I'd like some clarification on, in the past, when we've talked about attending and I'm all for it, attending the planning commission, what are the rules surrounding that? Can we go to those? Because in the past, I've been dissuaded from it.
Yes, you can attend planning commission meetings just like any citizen can, because they are public meetings. I believe the issue arises when it's a quasi-judicial decision, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Josette, it's when it's a decision that's going before planning and council regarding a specific property. So if one property was getting rezoned, for example, the Lincoln School Building, then that's where issues arise. And I'm not fluent in what those issues are, except for ex parte contact, where you would have to declare that in the council meeting.
So what you would do in essence, Joe said, or Stephanie, is when they brought that up, you would just excuse yourself from the meeting?
I'd have to ask Ruben to see to what extent you have to declare and how much participation you could offer. But I'll have to run that specific scenario by him.
Oh, okay. Well,
Bruce, the risk of going on a regular basis is that, say it's a specific request for some change of use or some code change in a specific property, and you're going to be hearing things in that moment that
you're going to adjudicate.
could sway you one way or another when it comes to you being the appeal. When you're the
Right.
appealing body, you're not supposed to have heard prior stuff. You're supposed to be submitted, all of you, with the same appeal. So that's why in the past we were pushed away from it, is because depending on what planning's discussing, it could be one of those things when you're the appealing body, then you can't really have been privy to all the information ahead of that. You're just the appealing body. But this thing with parking was a blanket code change for the entire city, so it's not anyone's going to appeal it. They would come to your public hearing as well, the same kind of process is how I understand it. But it's really a case-by-case basis on how much you know in those appealing proceedings, and then whether or not you'd have to declare or step out, depending on if you heard someone's horrible sob story of why they should have it, and then none of the other council got that. They're just dealing with the appeal.
Right. Well, the reason I ask is because JR had come to me about this prior to that, and I didn't have a very good explanation for him other than I had been always warned away from it. And I was kind of interested in just seeing how the process worked. You know, it wasn't going to the meetings on an ongoing basis, but just I had a casual interest in. So you produce a agenda for each one of the meetings, right?
Yeah. And they're posted online.
So Stephanie, you could check in with you and make sure that there was not something that might later on we might be asked to adjudicate.
Correct. And I could always run that by the city attorney as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for the clarification. I'd like to be able to attend it too, just to see how their process works.
They're pretty good meetings.
I'm finished, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other council discussion? If not, I think we're ready to move into an action item summary.
Okay, so I have that staff is going to work to bring back the different elements that were part of the Nehalem Basin Sewer project a while back to an upcoming meeting once we get that all put together for you guys to review and talk about options. And of course, if the Public Works Committee comes online, we'll be sending it to them to chew on too. And then I have that we've scheduled the work session for the 5th at 4 o'clock here at City Hall. Wear your mask for the parking Title IX amendments or council's amendments to that. And the priorities and quarterly meeting setup workshop. Anything else you guys can think of that I missed?
Josette, I saw in Angie's report of the awnings, she mentioned the awnings and they came out of the general fund. Are you close to putting those on the Learning Center? Or
So it's crazy, Rick. The guy came out on Salmon Festival weekend, which was October 3rd, to do his final measurements, and then it was like he disappeared again. So I'm hoping that we're going to get him on pretty dang soon because the weather's upon us where we need him.
we had budgeted.
And that's just looking so shoddy.
We had she budgeted what, 6,500 for those or something?
No, I think she upped it by 2,000, but I think it's going to come in under that by a good bit. But that's what we put in there.
And then in your staff report, you mentioned that they might start putting the new roof on the play shed maybe within a week or two.
Yeah, so they have kind of a list of the jobs they had promised, and they're just doing them as weather permits and chunking them down. So they thought us in the next 2 weeks they'd be out here.
Oh, okay.
What company is that, Josette?
No, I don't know. I'd have to get with Ange and get who put in the lowest bid. I can send that out though if you guys want it.
I was just curious.
I'll text it to you.
Well, that's all I have, and I guess we're ready to adjourn the meeting. Might as well round it off. We'll adjourn this meeting at 10:30 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.